Mr. President, I rise today in opposition to the joint resolution of disapproval that will reject the open Internet or the net neutrality rule that was put forward earlier this year by the Federal Communications Commission. I'm a strong supporter of the principle of network neutrality that the open Internet rule seeks to protect, and I believe that we should oppose this effort to reverse the FCC order. The rule that this resolution seeks to eliminate, the open Internet rule, was adopted by the FCC in December of 2010, and it will go into effect on November 20th of this year. Now, simply put, Mr. President, this rule creates common sense obligations and requirements for broadband Internet service providers like telephone and cable networks in order to keep the Internet free and open. And I believe, and in fact I know, that the open Internet rule will provide the certainty needed to foster job-creating investments and innovations while protecting broadband Internet consumers. Now, Mr. President, why is this important? Well, net neutrality is a way of saying that the Internet ought to be free and open. That it's a fundamental concept that's underpinned this marvelous new technology that we call the Internet. And this open Internet rule will make sure that we hew to that concept, that the Internet ought to be free and open. Now, we watched, and we're still watching, as democratic uprisings toppled totalitarian regimes all over the Middle East. Social networks like Twitter and technologies like text messaging are largely thought to have facilitated the so-called Arab Spring. But none of that would have been possible without an open and free Internet. And I have to say, Mr. President, what kind of message will we be sending to the remaining dictators, but probably even more importantly, those people who quest and thirst for freedom, if the citizens of the United States, through their United States Senate, vote to limit Americans' free access to the Internet? We've got to set an example for the rest of the world, Mr. President. The Internet must remain free and open. Now, the open Internet rule will achieve this by ensuring that 4 key Internet policies are maintained. Let me list them for you. 1, it will prevent broadband Internet providers from blocking lawful Internet content or services. 2, it will require transparency about broadband network management policies. 3, there will be a level playing field for consumers on the Internet. And 4, and this is important in these tough economic times we face, it will provide predictability for both broadband providers and Internet innovators. But as I've said, most importantly about what's so important about this debate is that in these economic times, Mr. President, net neutrality is also about jobs and economic development. As I travel my state of Colorado, I know the presiding officer travels his of New Mexico, what I hear most frequently, the refrain I hear from businesses and business leaders is that they need predictability in order to invest in their companies and create good-paying American jobs. Thousands of entrepreneurs that have built small Internet businesses can only be successful if they can reach their customers. However, if we don't preserve this net neutrality rule and content blocking is prevented, there won't be any guarantees that the next great online innovation or pioneering application will even be able to access the Internet. For example, the next Google or Amazon or Twitter will only be able to grow and be successful if they can reach their customers without worrying about interference from broadband providers that might want to preference another, more established competitor. So what we're talking about here is that the FCC is promulgating a common sense rule that will provide predictability for both the broadband providers and the Internet innovators. And the certainty of knowing the rules that broadband providers have to follow will give the confidence needed for investors to help the next Groupon breakthrough or many of the other numerous applications that we're all familiar with online. Innovation and job creation is what will finally lift our economy out of the slump that we've been desperately trying to recover from. We need net neutrality to ensure that innovation thrives and that the next great product, service, or way of doing business is not inhibited by market manipulations or restrictive online policies. So, Mr. President, I came to the floor to urge my colleagues to vote against this resolution. It only serves to distract us from the hard work we have to do to foster job growth and get our economy back on track. Let's agree to cement fair and reasonable rules of the road, as the FCC rule seeks to achieve, in order to provide certainty and a climate of innovation for the next generation of job creators. Mr. President, I yield the floor.